I read a book a few years ago by Lawrence Miller titled Barbarians to Bureaucrats. Never sold a lot of copies. Great book. I called him one time. I said, Lawrence, how do more people not know about your books? I'm not a good marketer. I just wrote the book. And he says how there's the prophet first, the visionary first, and then there's the barbarians. I'll go out there and make it happen. Sometimes a prophet is also the barbarian, like maybe a Steve Jobs. So prophet, barbarian, builder, explorer, administrator, bureaucrat, aristocrat. Okay, so America's kind of getting at this phase of bureaucrat, aristocrat.
That's right.
That's what we are, right?
That's right.
But then he says that during these times is when you can give birth to a synergist, right? That brings it together. Where does the synergist come to bring the left and the right together? Because you know the media is not playing the synergist. The media is kind of dividing a little bit.
That's right.
So who becomes a synergist?
No, but I think he's created what is a beautiful description. And I will ask, having read history and watched dynasties rise and decline and empires rise and decline, I have never seen the synergist.
You've never seen the synergist?
I've never seen the synergist. So I want an example of the synergist. What I have seen happen over and over again is this decline. He's describing that notion, also one generation to another, that what happens is it's the person who doesn't have anything, works hard, accomplishes something, has it, and so on. The synergist, I've never seen the synergist. All I've seen in history is these people deteriorating, that leadership deteriorating, and those people fighting. That's what I've seen repeatedly in history. That's what I'm saying it happened in the 1930s, but it happened. I've studied this going back. Literally, I wanted to study the last 500 years to understand the rises and declining of empires. And if I go to, I've studied before this the British Empire, before that the Dutch Empire, I studied the Spanish Empire, I studied the dynasties in China, and they all have the same paths. They all basically have the same paths. And those paths are... It's
not an optimistic...
It's the same thing as even companies. It's a company path, or think of a multi-generational family. You know, the first generation makes it, they work hard. The second generation, and that's why they go from the saying, from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, okay? If you think about the company, the corporation, corporation starts with an entrepreneur, and then it goes to the cycle he's describing, and then you get to the bureaucrat, okay? And then somebody who's the entrepreneur and scrappy, like you or whatever those people, come up and they're the revolutionaries, and they tear it down because they come up with better ways of doing it. And those are what the patterns look like.
You said in an interview you're not competitive, but you're driven.
I'm sorry?
You said in an interview you're not competitive, but you're very driven. You used the word driven.
I'm passionate.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm curious and I'm passionate.
How involved are you in encouraging this conversation and dialogue to take place? If you think income inequality and wealth inequality and opportunity inequality, if you think those 3 are a national crisis, how come national emergency, how come you're not leading that charge to bring and unify the groups together? Because you have credibility and you have a resume for people to say...
My ability, look, power comes with the extent of the role. I'm at a state, so I'll step back and I'll describe what my perspective is.
You know what I'm asking, though.
Sure. And I'm trying to answer it. And like any of my answers, you have to bear with me because they take a couple of minutes. Okay. The first is where I am in my life. I think there are 3 phases in one's life. First phase is you're dependent on others and you're learning. Then you go out in the world and you're increasingly, others become dependent on you and you're working and you're trying to be successful. Then you approach the 3rd phase where I'm in a phase where I'm going to my 3rd phase. And in that 3rd phase, my goal is to have other people be successful without me. And that's like extends to your kids, it extends to other things. So the reason I'm passing along these things is because I hope that they're helpful. The reason we're doing this interview, I'm not doing it for money. Okay, I'm not doing it for any other reason, that I hope it's helpful. And so I'm passing that along. It's so much dependent on other people to make their choices. One crusader is going to come in there. I'm not running for president. I'm not going to be in that position of control. That is not where I am. I'm just hoping that I could pass along my thoughts for people to take it or leave it, and leave it up to them, right? So, do I want to build what? Do I want to run for government or anything? We're in a situation, if you don't have your hands on the levers of power, it doesn't matter. Okay,
so
because
I agree.
Because you can only have to convince the people who have their hands on the lever of power. So the only thing I could do is give my best thoughts for people to take it or leave it, and that's where I am.
So do you think there's any room today for a media company to come out that is Walter Cronkite-esque, a platform that's not Fox, that's not CNN, MSNBC, Time, whoever it is, Washington Post, that's in the middle, where somebody can go to and say, you know what? I don't know if I'm a Democrat, but I don't know if I agree, but makes sense. I'm a Republican. That's kind of do you think we need something there where people to go to say, these guys are pretty independently thinking and they're stating the facts?
Absolutely. Do I think it will happen? Probably not.
Why do you say that?
History has shown me, and also I study psychology and neuroscience as to how the brain works and how habit and community decision making in a psychological neurological way is very much that you start with your conclusion and one filters consistent with the conclusion, and there's affinity groups and so on. And so I think that just the notion of that population deviating from that, and also the mechanics of sensationalism in terms of what sells,
yes,
that it produces a dynamic in which the media itself is not going for
what
that.
A way of processing this.
And the economics itself of the media is such that it doesn't sell, it doesn't support itself. I don't think there's a large enough market. And I think it's being exemplified by the power of extremism or illogical emotional behavior.
So it almost needs to be somebody that wants to contribute rather than wanting to profit from it.
But I don't even know how big the market is.
Would you buy it? Would you subscribe to it?
Well, of course. I had one of my sons came up with a media platform, but what he would do was it was an online, so I'll pass the idea along. I thought it was a terrific idea. Just a social site that he called it The Issue. That was the name of the company. And it's an on-site, and on that issue, whenever there was a controversial point of view, all he would do was find the smartest people who held different points of view on that. And he would put together 2 or 3 of those, which had then the opposite point of view on that. And you would look at that, and so you could say, I'm interested in the issue, and seeing both. And by the way, anybody can do this, so I'll pass it on to the world.
Yeah,
you could just.
I hope somebody gets inspired.
I hope somebody
to do this.
gets
Yes.
inspired to do that. So you could then say, I can get informed on both sides of the perspective of that issue. I was supporting a major correspondent type of person to bring on to have the name of the show was going to be In Pursuit of Truth. And they would find opposing points of view on any issue and have the thoughtful debate about those issues. The first one, we did actually a pilot for it, and it was called, I picked the most controversial point of view, God, reality, or delusion. And I picked that. You could take this thing or that, whatever the rule, pick the most controversial things and have a civil conversation about those types of things in terms of seeing both sides of the issue. It's a real big thing for me.
I think Dennis Prager did a little bit of that with Thomas Sowell. When I was in LA, we'd go to Wayne Hughes' house, and he would bring all these guys from both sides, like Obama's campaign manager versus Bush's campaign manager, and they'd go at it, and it was beautiful. It's like you're sitting in a classroom taking notes.
Beautiful.
I got one question and then speed
and then you
run,
realize issues are more complicated than they can be made.
Exactly.
Right?
And then you see similarities.
I know.
Similarities. We're like, wow, these guys have more in common than you thought, and they walk away liking each other.
Yeah.
And these are smaller settings.
Yeah, and let's book our agreements. let's get the agreement
Yes,
stuff
knock
done.
that away.
So could we agree that better education is an important thing? Could we agree on those problems and then work together for that? Man, that's
That would
where
be
we need to
fascinating,
go.
yes.